think that there is this almost expressionist approach here, where we could see perhaps one of the German expressionists with their interest in you know, almost the grotesque side of human relations and human interactions. But I would say that it never has, and I would quite consciously differentiate him in this respect, it never has a sense of pessimism or of a sense that these figures are capable of malignant activities. If anything, they've had a couple of beers too many. This is maybe the Red Mile. That's a local Calgary joke for those who are seeing this later. But you know, so I just wanted to be, you know, to ask you to be aware of this contrast in his work. By the way, the video, which is here on your left, is showcasing the two murals that he did here in the city. So they're both still extant. One of them is in a stairwell at SAIT, and the other is in the Bolin building, which is the former provincial court building on 7th Avenue and 7th Avenue and 5th Street Southwest. So that has footage of that particular building. Now I'm going to invite us to move all the way down to the corner. These paintings are actually all one series, so they're meant to be read as you see them. They're meant to be read left to right, moving around here to the conclusion. They are a series of paintings that meditate on Judas. And for those of you who are, I think most of us will know that name, but if you're not familiar with Judas, he was one of the 12 disciples of Jesus, and he was said to have betrayed Jesus. So in the 4 Gospels, he's described in the 3 Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke in exactly the same terms as having provided a sneaky opportunity to allow the police to arrest Jesus. So essentially then, on the eve of the Passover, there was this sense that Jesus had become a dangerous prophet, but he was too popular to arrest. And the story has it then that Judas was to go to the Garden of Gethsemane and to embrace him with a kiss, and then he would be known to the soldiers. Now I must say, as far as logic goes, this has always struck me as a little bit dubious, because I mean, as Jesus himself is, the gospel says, you know, I was preaching in your temples yesterday, and now you come to arrest me? How can you be acting as if it's a surprise what I'm doing? But at any rate, the story of Judas is a powerful story about betrayal. And I wanted to talk a little bit about this series because I believe it's really quite insightful with respect to Ron Spickett's approach to showing a biblical subject. Because he was not particularly interested in the conventional understanding of the story. And I want to quote a little bit from actually a conversation that Gyo-Zo Spickett shared with me about this. Here's what he said. He said, "The Judas series was based on a tendency to abandon one's inner self or true nature for material goods or money. The story itself is potent. It's about the human journey, not exclusively Christian. Someone offers you money and you tend to be attracted to that. The kiss was a separation from the material and the spiritual. The collapse of Judas signified the hard truth that the deed was not as rewarding as he thought it would be. It was a liberation practice, at first active and then a quiet process." So I wanted to read that to you because I think it's helpful to realize that he was inspired by Christian stories and by the Christian example, and he remains sympathetic to Christian teachings and looks on Jesus as a great teacher. But for him, Judas then was a story about how we are true or not true to our own ideals. So it was really about Judas himself. With that light in mind, I think it becomes a very much more interesting series. So we actually see this is Judas, in a sense, in his moment of reflection. You know, before he is turned to the weakness of his decision, or I should say, to the consequences of his decision. So here he is here. As an aside, but an important aside, I want to mention that by this period, these are from the 1970s, the artist was working with gold paint, gold spray paint. He used contemporary media, whatever the period was, he tended to use it. Now, in art, gold is that which dematerializes, if you think about icons. And so essentially then, this figure is already a kind of an icon. It's dematerialized into the spiritual realm. So this is intended to be a reflection on what it means to be human. This is a very busy painting, and this is that confab as Judas decides whether he's going to undertake this. He's talking with the priests, and he's deciding whether what he is going to do is really what he's going to do. They offer him money. And we're told that he accepts it. So here then, in this climactic moment, is the kiss. Now, if you read the Gospels, and I invite you to go and read them, it's interesting because the Gospels have, they've got a crew of thousands, right? There's all kinds of people showing up. There's the soldiers and everybody else. And you remember what happens in the Gospels? Well, we're told that one of his followers, Peter, takes out his sword and chops off the ear of one of the soldiers, and Jesus says, "No, that's not what I'm called to do. You can't act this way." And in one of the Gospels, he heals the person who suffered that wound. But you see, it's really about that isolated moment, that pregnant with meaning moment, where you simply have the person acting and the person on whom the action is taking place. There's the money. There's the 30 pieces of silver itself. And you see how they seem to fall like manna from heaven, don't they? But there's really not an awful lot of pleasure that he's taking from those pieces of silver. And we're told in the Gospels that he actually goes back and tries to give them back. And he says, I have caused an innocent man to be persecuted. What is that to us? That is to you. But the priests, we were told, used the money to establish potter's fields for the burial of foreigners. Now, this is described in the Gospels. This is just simply called death. It's the death of Judas. And we're told that he went out and hanged himself. Terrible moment, really. And I think it's a terrible moment told with great power by this painting, with these hot tones and this aura then of confusion. It's almost electrified with its sense of aloneness. With that in mind, it's really quite poignant that we have this final painting, which is Judas 2, which is simply a peaceful resolution. Now, that's not described in the Bible in any place. So it's Gyo-Zo's own understanding then of what it means to undertake a spiritual journey, a spiritual choice. Now, I've spent some time with this series because I think it's fairly important for us to see the way he works. On the one hand, you have inspiration from a well-known biblical story, which he is quite respectful of and understands well. But on the other hand, you have a very personal interpretation of that same story.
I have a question.
Yep.
Any sense of, like, he starts using this very bold figure, like, you talked earlier about the figure in space,
Yep.
kind of moving forward, and then here he, like, kind of just has this bold figure, a moment in time, outlined by blue and gold, and I saw it in other places too. Is there any, like, did he make a choice to start doing that, or, I mean, what's going on stylistically for him in these kind of one figure, one shot?
Yes, I think that's a really interesting. The question is, what's going on with these one figure, one shot? I think there was this sense then of really trying to epitomize, you know, to lift things up to their